Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. And this time I wanted to do a little different. I'm not going to just do an update or anything about my transition. Instead, I've got a little bit of a story time today, because I recently had a rather entertaining troll on my channel in my comments and stuff, and I just felt like talking about it. I know a lot of people out there are like, oh, just ignore the trolls and block them and get on with your life, and you know, why are you bothering with this and that and the other. But I find trolls very entertaining. They don't bother me in terms of like making me upset or anything, but I do find them ridiculously amusing, especially some of them. I mean, there's some obvious trolls out there that I'm like, yeah, whatever, I just don't have time for you, and I'll block them right away. But most of the time, I like to mess with them first, because it's fun, okay? If they control me, I control them right back, and that's what I do. And this particular one, I did engage with for a few days, just because, I don't know, it amused me, and I thought I would kind of share what was going on with these guys. Well, I say these guys, I mean, I highly suspect that it was the same person coming at me from a couple different angles. It started with one, and the whole thing was accusing. Okay, this is where the funny part. So he's posting comments on some of my older videos before I started to transition, where I'm still presenting mostly feminine at that point, or as feminine as a tomboy can anyway. And he starts, accusing me of lying about my gender and lying about, being trans and stuff. Which, if he had been watching my current videos and stuff and then going back to my older ones and things, you'd be like, okay, yeah, that's, whatever. But here's the kicker. He wasn't like saying, hey, you're actually a woman and stop lying about trying to be a guy. He was doing the opposite. He was insisting that I was born as a cisgender male, and that I must have transitioned into a female at some point in the past, and that whatever my transition is now is I'm actually detransitioning, but I'm lying about my detransition by saying I'm transitioning. That was his logic. And I'm saying he because it just sounded like a male, so I guess I'm going to assume this person's gender because they were trying to assume mine. And there, take that. But yeah, I mean, the leaps of logic to try and say that a trans guy is lying about transitioning because they're actually a cisgender guy and they're detransitioning. It's like, that's not how this stuff works to begin with. The vocal changes I'm having are like one thing. It's like, once if a transgender woman, so assigned male at birth, transitions to female, if they have anything done with their vocal cords or whatever, generally their voice isn't going to go back afterwards. If they decided to detransition, and if they had a very, very feminine voice like I did, like most trans women, either, if you're young enough and you go on hormone blockers and then go on to onto your transition hormones and everything else, you can possibly avoid developing a masculine voice, and therefore, younger trans women today have more of a chance of having a feminine voice. That's just kind of natural. It's developed naturally because of having hormone blockers and that kind of thing. People who are my age and transition later in life do tend to struggle with their voice a lot. I know there's a lot of vocal training that goes into for trans women, or possibly surgeries to adjust their vocal cords. I mean, there's a number of things that can be done, but it's pretty extensive. Where for me, transitioning female to male, my voice change is all testosterone. I have not done anything. I've not done any vocal training. I know there's vocal training that trans guys can do, especially if they're pre-testosterone and stuff, but I haven't done any of that. My vocal cords tend to strain really easily anyway, and I just didn't want to try that. I don't want to have to be constantly concentrating on my voice. So my voice is my voice. It sounds the way it sounds, and I'm not doing anything to make it sound the way it is. It's all the testosterone, and that's it. And I'm just kind of going with however it turns out, it turns out. And so the leap of logic of saying that I must have been born male to begin with, because I think the pieces of evidence that this person was this troll was spouting were that I have a square head apparently, and I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, and that something about finger length ratios and things, and I'm like, I think he was saying something about my index finger being longer than my ring finger, but if you actually look, my ring finger here is longer than my index finger, so there goes that theory. Although when it comes to finger ratios, I actually did a little lookup on Google and did some research on it, and the finger length ratios has nothing to do with your birth sex. So whether you're XX or XY, and I'm not going to go into intersex people because that's throws a whole nother dimension into it that I didn't research into that. So let's just sticking with the majority of the population of either being XX or XY, and obviously I was born XX. I was assigned female at birth. I do not have male genitalia, and I don't plan to either. So chromosome-wise, I am technically female. At least from the chromosome side of things. But my gender is still male, and I am transitioning to male because that's my gender, not my sex. Just to kind of clarify that. But your sex does not necessarily determine your finger length ratios. That has nothing to do with male or female. Your finger length ratios are not dependent necessarily on that. It's actually the hormones that you're introduced to in the womb. And so the different finger length ratios, you can be born female and have a, like this person was saying, like finger, with the finger ratios and stuff. And it's actually more the ratio of how different they are, and not necessarily whether or not one is longer than the other. So like I could have, if I kind of squidge it here, I could have a longer ring finger or so whatever. Yeah, because my ring finger is the one that's longer than my index finger. But if I had a longer index finger instead or something, but you can see that from the ratio they're very similar in length. The ring finger isn't that much longer than the index finger, so it's a very short ratio. And so I didn't really get a lot of androgens in the womb. I got some, obviously, and obviously enough to get me to be trans, but not enough to affect my finger length ratios, because apparently if you have more androgens, especially testosterone, in the womb, then and this happens more often with people who are born with the birth sex of male, they'll have a much wider difference. Like one finger will be significantly shorter than the other, or significantly longer than the other. And it really doesn't matter which one is the longer one. It's actually the ratio between the two that matters. And my ratio is, you can tell that they're, depending on how I hold my hand, they're almost exactly the same length, or the ring finger's a bit longer. But that's it. And that doesn't mean anything from a gender perspective whatsoever. It just means I have, what's considered more common in females, and therefore had less exposure to testosterone in the womb. Boom. That's it. That's all that means. But this person was insisting that because they thought my index finger looked longer to them or something, that all of a sudden, I must have been born with an XY chromosome and not XX chromosome, and that I'm a tranny. They said that, and that I'm was pretending to be a woman, and now I'm going back to being a man again. I'm like, no. I wish I had been born male to begin with. That would have been cool, but I do wear a binder. You can see here I have a binder on, so I obviously have breasts that I haven't had removed yet, and whatever. And and I'm not. I'm just kind of rambling at this point about this, but it was just interesting that this person was just being so insistent on the fact that I must have been born male. And I'm like, well, at least you're not misgendering me, thank you. So there's that. But then things got interesting. So, and I'll get back to this other guy in a minute. But then I was commenting on there's another trans guy out there that he has been trans, but I think he's stopped taking testosterone. He's detransitioning, sort of. I mean, he's been on testosterone for like 14 years, and he's just decided to stop taking it. And I left a comment. Just kind of, I forget exactly what the comment was, but I left a comment, and this guy replied to me and stuff, and it's like, hey, I'm trans too, and I'm also 40. I'm also, like we got into this conversation. And then he started commenting on some of my videos and saying like he was 49 and he's trans, and it's great to see someone who's older, who's trans and stuff. And so he sent me his email address, and so we started emailing back and forth one evening. And at first I was like, yeah, he's from Chicago and I'm originally from Chicago, and so we started talking about things in Chicago, and I don't know, it was just a really nice conversation that I was having, and I thought, hey, this is cool. It's nice to run into someone who's my age, who's also trans, and happens to live in an area that I'm familiar with, and I don't know, it's kind of cool. But then the next day, all of a sudden, I get this email from him, and he's like just attacking me. And why do you say that I can't be trans if I'm not taking testosterone? Which I've never said to anybody ever. I mean, even the original video that I commented on, I wasn't making any judgments whatsoever. It's his choice if he wants to go off of testosterone, and he's still using he, him pronouns, so I'm like, okay. And not everyone can take testosterone. There are some people like, and I had a conversation with this guy the night before when we were still having this good conversation, and he was saying this like, yeah, I tried taking testosterone, but my body was rejecting it, and it's been giving me health problems, so I had to stop taking it. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. But you know what? It doesn't matter whether or not you're on hormones. You're still a man, and like, don't let other people judge you for that. That's basically what I said. But then all of a sudden the next day he's like, why did you tell me that I can't be a man just because I'm not? And I'm like, I didn't say that. But then what clued in for me, and then all of a sudden he starts leaving these really nasty comments on my video, on my videos, and saying things like that I'm being brainwashed by the LGBT pedophile mafia or whatever, and I was like, okay, either this guy isn't completely insane, or or a troll, obviously, or not trans at all, and just because I mean, why would someone who honestly identifies as trans attack another trans person for being trans? Like, just that there was a disconnect there, and I was like, okay, this guy's got to be a troll. But then what made me realize that he was probably the same troll that was attacking me before, just with a different username, was the fact that both of them were accusing me of being a Freemason or part of the Masons. And I'm like, wait, what? It's such a damn random thing. And in both cases, they were insisting I must be a Mason. And the first guy that was trolling me was saying that it's the Freemasons that are putting trans babies in women's bellies they're injecting women with hormones, and that's why there's trans people. It's because the Masons are doing this, and they're forcing women to carry trans babies by I don't know, it's something like that. And I was like, wait, what? and don't deny it, your parents were Masons and stuff, and I'm like, no, they weren't. Trust me, I would have known if they were. I don't really know much about the Masons. I mean, I know, like, there's Masonic temples in places. There's one in Chicago. There's the Illinois Masonic Temple. And I went to a Disney on Ice show there once, because they have a big stage, and it's like a theater complex-y thing. And they hold events there, and there was a Disney on Ice that was held there, so I know I saw that once. But other than that, I really don't know a lot about the organization. I know that they're a religious organization, or they're affiliated with. I know the members are Christian-ish, and that kind of thing. So, but I don't really know much else about them as an organization. Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces of them being connected to the Illuminati, if you believe in that kind of stuff, and they're at that point that you kind of get into the whole conspiracy theory stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's totally not my area. I don't buy into any of that kind of stuff. And so when troll number, what I thought was troll number 2 starts throwing the Mason stuff at me, I'm like, you're the same guy that was attacking me the other day, aren't you? Anyway, I just found this highly amusing. The leaps of illogic that this guy was trying to use to justify all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So in the end, ultimately, it got to a point where the second person, the guy, regardless if it was 2 people or not, ended up starting to accuse me of stuff that was completely untrue. Accuse me of calling him a retard, which I don't use that word. Okay, I do not call people that, ever. I don't care how poorly they are acting or how insane they are being. I don't call people that. It's a horrible word, and no one deserves to be called that, and I don't use that word. And at that point, I was done with the conversation. I'm like, you know what? I don't use that kind of language, and I never would accuse someone of or call someone that. I don't do that. And then they started ranting on again about how I wouldn't answer the question of how, just because he's not taking testosterone that I can say that he's not a man. I'm like, again, I didn't say that either. In fact, the night before, like I said, was like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry that you can't take testosterone, but you're still a guy. If you identify as a trans guy, and you say you're a trans guy, I don't care if you take your hormones or not. Not everyone can. There are health problems that can come with it, and you know what? I would not misgender a trans guy as long as they tell me, like, hey, you know what, I'm trans and I'm a guy, and as long as I am aware of how they identify, that's it. They're a guy, they're a man, and that's it. And I'm not going to question who or what they are, whether or not they can take testosterone or not, because that doesn't. Whether or not you can take hormones doesn't change who you are as a person. Just being able to transition is a great thing if you can do it. And I'm glad that I can do it. I'm glad that I haven't run into any really major problems. I mean, yeah, I've got the fibroids on my uterus, and having to go get my hysterectomy, which once again proves the fact that I wasn't born male to begin with. I wish I was, but that's been the only real issue I've had with taking it. And so, I'm lucky that I haven't had a problem. I have heard of other people out there who are trans guys that have run into problems with taking testosterone, and I'm sure there are trans women out there that have run into problems taking estrogen, because bodies will reject things, and so it is what it is. I mean, heck, there's even an entire category of intersex where people, they're born XY, so their biological sex is male, but they have an intolerance to testosterone in their system, and so their bodies develop female because they don't like the testosterone just isn't processed properly. I don't understand exactly how it works, but ultimately they end up like, and they can't transition to their, like, even if they identify as male, they can't transition to male because their body is intolerant of testosterone. So they're kind of stuck with a very feminine presentation regardless of how they identify as a person. And you gotta, I feel for someone like that, because I mean, if they identify as female, that's great. You know what? It's not too much of a hindrance. But if they identify as male but their body just says nope to the testosterone, then so that kind of sucks. So I don't know if this troll was telling me at all any truth. I mean, he knew a lot about Chicago, so I'm pretty sure that he was being honest about being from Chicago, because he knew a lot about the city and the neighborhoods, and we kind of had this back and forth about different things. And he was talking about different areas of the North Side and a couple of different restaurants and things. And so I'm like, okay, so this person at the very least lives in Chicago, if not has been born and raised in Chicago, because they knew too much about the city and especially about what the city was like back in the 80s when I was there. So age range wise, I'm guessing that they're very close to my age as well. But then with the whole trans stuff, I'm like, either this person just really is angry about the fact that the testosterone is not working for them and they have to stop taking it, and so they're lashing out at other trans people because they're angry about the fact that they can't transition. Or they really aren't trans at all and they're just a troll and they're just being an asshole. Or somewhere in between the two possibilities. But the whole thing blows my mind that the entire time he never misgendered me once because he kept insisting I was a guy, and I'm like, you know, there are worse things for me to be called, and that's not one of them. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because it was kind of an amusing thing that happened, and it was my first real troll on my channel. So hey, you know, I'm getting someone's attention out there. If I'm all of a sudden getting some trolls, I mean, I haven't really had a lot of trolls on my channel yet. So thank you. All right, so that's it for that story today. I have my surgery coming up in 3 weeks now, so I may or may not try to make a video before that. If not, I will definitely make an update video afterwards when I feel up to it, in order to say like how I'm doing and you know, has it solved my other issues and stuff or not. So stay tuned. You'll see me in somewhere between 3 and maybe 6-ish weeks from now. So I hope everyone has a good summer until then. Take care. Bye.